For children whose preferences are truly unknown, the preference probe procedure will include these steps: collect preliminary information, conduct and videotape a preference probe, watch the videotape, code the videotape, and analyze the data to determine preferences. First, collect information from parents, from your own observations, from discussions with support staff such as physical and occupational therapists, and from any other available resources. The object is to come up with items, activities, or people to use in the preference probe. Some non-social stimuli commonly used in preference probes are a mechanical toy with visual and auditory features, a fan with its tactile feedback, or light toy that provides visual stimulation. Be sure to avoid any stimuli that might provoke seizures. Social stimulation might include a kiss on the cheek, talking to the child while stroking his hair, or rocking or playing peekaboo. You might also consider stimuli that appeal to olfactory, tactile, or kinesthetic senses. Decide on 5 to 10 items or activities that you think the child might enjoy. Once you've decided on a list of potential stimuli, you will conduct and videotape the preference probe. First, set up a schedule for presenting and withdrawing the chosen stimuli. We're interested in how the child reacts as the stimulus is presented, and also in how she reacts when the stimulus is taken away or stopped. What she does in the off phase may show that she wants more or that she's relieved that the stimulus is gone. Sometimes a delayed reaction may show up during the off phases for a child who takes a long time to process stimulation. Comparing reactions during on and off phases also shows whether the child even perceives the presence or absence of the stimulus. In other words, whether she can discriminate between on versus off phases. We use this data sheet to help us structure a preference probe. First, we set up the stimulus presentation and withdrawal schedule, listing each stimulus on the left. We will go back and forth between stimuli, but each one will be presented the same number of times. The duration of presentation may vary depending on the nature of the stimulus. For instance, it may take longer to present social stimulation than to activate a mechanical toy. If we don't keep the total number of trials per stimulus constant, the results will be difficult to interpret. You will need several pages of the preference probe form to set up your schedule. When you're ready to begin, set up the videotape recorder. It will be your eyes and ears so that you can concentrate on presenting the stimuli. Present each stimulus for the predetermined on period and remove it completely during the off period according to the schedule. Make sure the child isn't distracted by something in the environment other than the stimulus you're presenting. Also make sure that the child is positioned in a way that he is free to concentrate on the stimulus. For instance, you wouldn't want the child to be preoccupied with trying to keep his head up. Once you have videotaped the preference probe, set aside time to review the whole videotape without trying to code it. Use this time to decide what behaviors you should be looking for as you code the videotape. For instance, one little girl held her hands to her mouth for large portions of the day. It was a significant behavior when she kept her hands away from her mouth. This turned out to be an important way to distinguish when she was and wasn't interested in something, so we recorded hands away from mouth whenever we saw it. Based on your initial viewing of the tape, enter the behaviors you intend to code at the top of the coding form. Now watch the tape a second time and code it. You'll be recording whether any of the behaviors you have listed across the top of the form occur during the presentation or withdrawal of the stimuli that you listed down the left side. Stop the tape whenever you notice the child reacting in some way to a stimulus. Check off any behaviors you noticed on the appropriate line, depending on whether the stimulus was on or off when the behaviors occurred. For instance, a little boy might show a positive reaction to social interaction and a negative reaction when it is stopped. On the coding form, smile and squeal might be checked for the on phase of social stimulus, while frown, cry, and head turn might be checked for the off phase. Now you will analyze the data you have so painstakingly collected to answer a variety of questions about the child's preferences and motor behaviors. Since you have presented each stimulus several times during the course of the probe, you will have several lines devoted to each stimulus scattered across your coding pages. You will summarize the data for each stimulus across all the trials for that stimulus. Since you have recorded the same total number of trials for each stimulus, you can compare the frequencies of various behaviors between the various stimuli and between on versus off conditions. The major questions that you will try to answer by examining the data are these. To which stimuli does the child show the greatest reaction overall? Calculate which stimuli are associated with the greatest number of behaviors across on and off conditions, summing together the trials for each of the same stimulus. Is there a clear difference in the child's behavior when you withdraw those stimuli? Examine the data for indications that the child responds differently in on versus off conditions for any given stimulus item. That is it clear that the child notices that stimuli have been presented or withdrawn? Does this suggest that the child likes or dislikes those stimuli? For stimuli to which the child is especially responsive, look at the specific behaviors produced to determine whether the reaction is a positive or a negative one. What stimuli appear to cause the most positive reactions? Determine which stimuli are associated with the highest frequency of behaviors that appear to indicate a positive reaction, such as smiling, squealing, or gazing at the stimulus. What stimuli appear to cause the most negative reactions? Determine which stimuli are associated with the highest frequency of behaviors that appear to indicate a negative reaction, such as fussing, or crying, or averting the gaze. Does the child appear to lose interest after repeated presentations of certain stimuli? Look at the reaction to each stimulus over time to determine whether later presentations of a particular stimulus seem to be greeted with less enthusiasm than were earlier presentations. Overall, what appear to be the child's most preferred stimuli? Looking back at your answers to all of the previous questions, decide which stimuli appear to be most preferred. Finally, what behaviors you observed might serve as communicative behaviors for early communication instruction? Look at the frequencies with which each coded behavior was produced and consider whether those behaviors appear to be intentional. Determine what will be good behaviors for the child to use to communicate initially. Discuss the motor results with parents and therapists to determine if a switch is indicated, and if so, discuss what kind of switch the child might be able to activate and which position will make it easiest for the child to activate the switch. On the next page of this unit, you will find links to print out the preference probe coding form and the list of questions that the preference probe is designed to answer.